Hey nerdy knitters, Tonia here. It's time for another episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast. So grab your favorite drink and your knitting and let's settle in for a good chat. Hey knitters, it's so lovely to be sitting and chatting with you again at our monthly knitting podcast, and we always start with some news and announcements and talking about books before we get into the knitting, and this month is no different. I want to mention first a sweet gift that a dear friend made for me. You'll see it right behind me there on the bookshelf. It was my birthday last week, and a friend of mine is an artist and she does all of these wonderful paintings on wood, and she painted my logo and put it on a piece of wood like that. And I was just so surprised and overwhelmed, and I just loved it. And she does other artwork as well. You can see I've got an alpaca or a llama back there on the wall as well that I just hung up, and I haven't quite decided where to put this yet. Should I leave it on the shelf or should I hang it up back there? Just like in a corner of my bedroom. This is my little office space. So if you have a thought about where I should put that, I'd love to hear it. I'm going to have a link for her Facebook page down below if you want to see some of her other artwork. She's just very talented, and she does lots of really cute animals and things like that, and does different craft fairs and shows in our area. But I was just so completely surprised that she had done that for me, and I just love it. So I wanted to point it out to you. Now, a few other announcements. I'm working on the Professional Hand Knitting Designer course. Professional Designer course from the Knitting Guild Association, and I just finished the final module. My husband's dropping off the package in the mail for me today. With the final module, you have to actually design a pattern and knit the pattern and send it in. So the teacher, Donna Eston, she is a great designer as well. She is in charge of the class. So that's going off in the mail to her so she can look at the finished product and compare it to the pattern and make sure everything, looks good and all of that. So everything else, I think there were some questions to answer, and I had to create a style guide, which is something that every designer should have. So all of your patterns sort of look the same. You don't want to have instructions written in a million different ways. You want everything to be pretty cohesive. And some other assignments like that. So this last module wasn't as difficult as Module 2. Module 2 was a lot of work with learning how to grade patterns and things like that. This one is more, this last module was more about all of the other details, like where you're going to list your patterns for sale, talking about taxes and all of those types of business details. And since I've already been releasing patterns, a lot of that there wasn't much actual work I had to do. I just had to answer some questions about my process and things like that, and what businesses are like here where I live in Quebec, and just different details like that. And then the final project is creating a design and writing up the whole pattern just like you're going to publish it. And that is actually the last thing to do. After everything is all done and back from her, I have to publish the design, and then I will have finished the program completely. So it's been a really good experience. I've learned a lot about how to grade patterns. That was probably the biggest thing that I've learned from this, but also how to create pattern submissions or design submissions for magazines and things like that. I learned a lot about that process as well, and I've started to do more and more of that, and have had some accepted, not as many as I've sent out. The ratio of submissions compared to acceptances is very wide, but it's been a good experience and I enjoy doing it. And the course has been very, very informative. I've learned a lot. So, if you have thought about designing or you've knit stuff for yourself and you'd like to get into that, then I highly suggest this course. It really does cover everything that you'll need to know. There is a lot of information included, but there's also a lot that you're expected to sort of explore on your own. She covers grading at a higher level, but you really need to go find videos and website tutorials and things like that, and just really start to look at that for yourself and build your own spreadsheet and things like that. That's not all done for you. You have to figure out how to do that, which I think is an important skill, because it would be easy enough to just give you a spreadsheet and say, okay, here you go. But I think it's actually more beneficial to build the spreadsheet yourself so you can learn how to use it. It's harder, I think, if it's all done for you already. That might actually be more difficult But anyway, just it's a great course, and if you've ever thought about designing, then I do recommend this because it covers everything that you'll need to go to know whether you want to self-publish or whether you want to publish, like submit ideas to magazines and things like that. So let's talk about our books. Let's get into the knitting content now that we've got all of that done. So 2 books that I want to talk about. The Sock Knitter's Handbook by Charlene Schurch and Beth Parrott. And then the Sock Knitter's Workshop by Jostes and Stephanie Vanderlyn. So these 2 books, I am working right now on our next series of sock patterns. If you've been around at all, you know that we've released 6 different patterns for cuff to toe socks using all of the different needle configurations, DPNs, magic loop, 2 at a time on magic loop, 2 circulars, flexible double pointed needles, shorty needles. Is that all of them? I feel like I'm forgetting one. 2 circulars, did I say that? Anyway, so 6 different methods for knitting socks, and then a lot of different ways to knit heels and toes. There's lots of different ways to do them. I mean, you can say short row heels, but then you've got the different types of short rows, or even mock short rows, heel flap and gusset, but you can change what's the stitch pattern on the heel flap. You can change the heel turn. Like, there's so many different ways to do all of those things. So I narrowed it down to 6 different ways, like 6 different heels, 6 different toes, or different ways to change decrease rates. Like, it could be a basic wedge toe, but you can change the decrease rate to change the shape of the toe. So we did all of that. And now I'm working on a toe up series. That's one of the things I've been working on over the summer, and we'll start releasing those tutorials in September. But I wanted to get a head start because I have to sort of like decide on the construction and then knit the sample and then record the video, and then I'll make the grade the pattern to all the different sizes. I think we do 11 sizes for the patterns. I try to do like a full range from a very small kid sock to an adult large male foot. So there's a lot of sizes in there as well, and grade the pattern for all of those sizes and look at all of the different construction methods, and of course all of the needle configuration methods as well. We're going to do the same 6 ways for knitting a small circumference in the round, but starting at the toe and working to the cuff. So these 2 books have been a wonderful, wonderful resource. I don't own them. I keep getting them from the library. I really should just buy my own copies, because once they have to go back, I just reorder them again because I refer to these 2 so often. Now, these 2 are what I would call like a choose your own adventure sock. It's got all the basics, you know, how like about gauge and your needles, blah, 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 all of that. But then the majority of the books are different heel constructions with all of the instructions for making those heels, different toe configurations with the instructions for knitting those toes. So basically you could go through here and choose the stitch count that you want to knit, and then pick a heel and pick a toe and really make your own sock. So both of these books, now they do have some similar heels and toes because there are only so many ways you can make them. But then there are some differences as well. Like there is the mock short row heel is in this book. That's the only place I've ever seen it. I've seen some videos on YouTube, but I've never actually seen it in a, this is the only book reference that I've seen that type of heel. And we did one of those heels. I'm working on that sock right now actually for the toe up version, but we did do a mock short row heel for the cuff down, where instead of short rows you use decreases and then picking up stitches to create the heel shape. And we're going to do that again, but we're also going to do it for a toe. We're going to do it for a mock short row toe and the heel. That's the second sock I'm working on right now, but that one is in here. And this one has, let me see, what's it called? The strong heel, which I've seen in different places as well, but has really good instructions. I actually knit a sample because I thought we would use that heel construction, but I did not enjoy the way it fit me. So I decided to forgo that. We had enough other heels to choose from that we didn't have to use that, but that's another heel construction you can look at in this book. So it's got heels and toes, so you can sort of make your own, and it's also, both books also have different cuffs, like knit 2, purl 2, knit 1, purl 1, other pattern, like other rib patterns that you can use for cuffs as well. Different cast-ons. There is some talk about toe-up socks as well in both of these books. There's more reference to them in this one, but there is a smaller section in this book as well. Some heel patterns are completely reversible, like a short row heel or an afterthought heel can be done either way without changing the instructions at all. Heel flap and gusset, you are working in reverse, so that does have different instructions. But some of the other heels are completely reversible no matter which way you're knitting your sock. So it includes all of that, and this book also includes some actual sock patterns if you just want to knit socks that are all the instructions are already there for you. But really the majority of these books is what I would call like a choose your own adventure, where you can look at all of these different heel constructions and choose the one that you want to knit, and the toes as well. So I'm actually thinking of doing that after we finish our toe up series, of creating like a pattern, one for cuff down and one for toe up, that has a collection of different heels and toes, so you can sort of like pick and choose, or I think of it like a choose your own adventure. If you ever read those books when you were a kid where you would read to a certain page and then it would tell you, go to this page if you want to choose this path, or go to this page if you want to choose this choice or whatever. I don't know if you ever read any of those. I loved those books when I was a kid, and I feel like a sock pattern like that could be really fun, but it feels like it could be very big as well when you think of all the different heels and toes, then the different needle configurations. If I include those as well, it would be that'd be quite a hefty pattern. But the thought is there. I don't know if that would be interesting to anybody, or if they just prefer buying like individual sock patterns, but I kind of like the idea of creating like one big pattern, one for toe down, like toe up, and then one for cuff down, that includes like all those heels and toes and how to work them. And so you can choose what you want to do. Anyway, it's a thought. Maybe in the future. Let me know if that's something that would be interesting to you. But I do want to, I'm going to link to these down below on Amazon so you can check them out. If you are the type who wants to be adventurous and create your own sort of vanilla sock pattern that's custom to your foot, then all of those heels and toes, you're going to find them in these books. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention about them. If needle configuration is important to you, both of these are written with the instructions with double pointed needles in mind, like knitting on 3 needles and then using the 4th to knit around the sock. So you'll have to sort of like make that adjustment in your head as you're working, if you prefer using like magic loop or some other method. I have 3 things that are off my needles. The first, I can't even show you. I keep forgetting to take pictures of things before I mail them off. It was a design. I talked about it in the last video, if you watched that one. If not, you can go back and watch it. I'll have it linked at the end of this one. The mirrored cowl, where I used 2 colors of cashmere yarn. Oh, it was such a delight to knit with that yarn. And then it was just a straighted color work pattern it was for a cowl, and it was knit lengthwise, like you knit it this way and then you joined the 2 ends in seaming them together to create the cowl. But on one side of the cowl, I held like color 1 was the background, color 2 was the pattern, and then on the second side of the cowl, I reversed that. So it was sort of like a mirror image on both sides, and oh, it was really fun to knit, and the yarn was just luscious. It was 100% cashmere. Sadly, I didn't get to keep that one. It's a sample that went back to the yarn company, Biscotte Yarns. It's a yarn dyer company here in Quebec, and they have so many wonderful yarns. I've used a lot of their different bases. The cashmere was a new one for me, and oh my word, it was absolutely lovely. And I'm contemplating like splurging, because it's not, I mean, it's a more expensive yarn, but it's just, and I don't usually love fuzzy yarns around my face. Sometimes I just feel they feel more itchy or scratchy, even if there's not, you know, to a lot of people. But this cashmere was absolutely lovely, and it felt so luscious and just really nice. So I am contemplating splurging on a couple skeins to knit another version of that for myself, because I mean, I can't say I would use 100% cashmere for many projects, especially because it's so soft, it would pill so easily. But for a cowl, it's not going to be like rubbing on my, you know, on my underarm or something, where that's where I tend to get a lot of pills on my sweaters. But a cowl, you wouldn't be getting that wear and tear. So it's one of those projects where it's sort of worth it to have like a luxury yarn, because it's right on your neck and on your face. And anyway, I wish I had taken a picture. I don't know why I didn't, but I did talk about it in the last video. So that's finished and just all sent off in the mail today. So that will be releasing sometime over the winter. I'm not sure about the release date yet. My next finished project is the sweater that I'm wearing. This is Marquise by Jennifer Beale, and I made a lot of modifications to this. When I bought the pattern, I checked the gauge and then picked a yarn that had what I figured was the same gauge according to the website. Now this is Knit Picks CotLin, a blend of cotton and linen yarn from Knit Picks. The original was like a sea cell, I don't remember, silk. I'm not sure what the blend was, but the gauge information was the same. But when I swatched my gauge was, I was getting fewer stitches to the inch. My stitches were larger than the recommended stitches, but I didn't want to keep going down needle sizes because I liked the way this fabric was, and I didn't want it to be really tight, and because of the difference in fibers, I was nervous that it was just going to be too stiff and not what I wanted. And I wanted, you know, a light summer top that would move, you know, and be comfortable. So with my gauge differences, I picked a size based on the desired circumference that I wanted. I've talked about this before. I can link to a video where I go into more depth with a different top using the same yarn, actually in a different color, where my gauge was not the same, but how that process can work. I'm not going to say it's completely foolproof. You have to be willing to rip things out, and I had to do some of that with this. But it starts here, like you make one little piece here and you do the same for the back, and then you make that little piece and then you knit some lace, and then you join them together and you go this way and knit one shoulder. Then you pick up stitches here and you work in this direction and do the same on the back, and then join them together and knit this shoulder. So it's like a saddle shoulder construction. But your row gauge is very important because that's what creates the width of the neckline and the shoulders. And when I first did this, I followed the pattern exactly, even though my row gauge was like so completely different. And I had done the first part and had cast on and started the second side, and I'm looking at the neckline and it was super narrow, and I'm like, this is gonna be iffy. So I knit a little bit more, enough so I could try it on, and I got it over my head, but not by much. Like, it was a tight fit, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't want this. I wanted something, you know, it's a summer top. I want it off. I don't want it on my neck. I want some more space there. Ooh, you can really see my tan lines. And so I ripped it all out and I started over, and I added more repeats of the lace on both sides to make it like the width I wanted it to be. And then that was the first modification. There was this right here, and I think I added more length on the lace as well, because I knew I didn't want it to be like way up here. I wanted it to come down off my arms. You don't add sleeves to this one. This sort of saddle shoulder creates like sort of your drop cap sleeve or whatever. But that also creates like the width of your garment, because that's sort of all in one piece. You do lose some stitches down here. You start decreasing a bit, but this sort of creates that whole shoulder shaping or sleeve shaping. So once that part's done, you pick up stitches right along that edge and you start knitting in this direction, and you do the same on the back until the front and the back are like to the underarm, and then you join and you start working everything in the round. And then there is this lace panel along the underarm. Like after you finish the bust, you have these lace panels down each side. And then that's it. It's just plain stockinette, those lace panels. I added more increases there as well because I wanted more of an A-line shape. So on each side of the lace panel, I had an increase. So 4 increases, I think every 6 rounds or so. I think that's what I decided on. And I mean, that it doesn't affect the lace panel at all. It just adds more width to the front and the back, because I like an A-line shape. I've got a bigger bum and a stomach, and I want to I don't want things tight fitting. I want them to be more loose. So I like things to fit very well in the top and then sort of skim away from from under my bust, you know, skim out from there. So things aren't too tight. That's just my preferred way for things to fit my body shape. There was some color work in the original pattern, but I skipped that completely. And I just did one solid color. And it came out really nice. I really like it. It fits very well, and it's a nice summer top. This, well, I don't, on the super hot days, you know, like where it's very hot and humid, I don't usually wear my hand knit garments in the summer. It's more like a very light tank top. I have actually a couple like cotton dresses. Those are probably what I wear when on super hot days. But for the rest of the summer, I've got a stack of summer garments. I can see them right up there in the closet that I wear quite a lot because they're just comfortable, and plant fibers are perfect for summer. Cotton, linen, bamboo is a really great one. Any blend of those makes really nice, breathable summer garments that are easy to care for because most often they can be washed and dried. I still do them on a delicate cycle, and I start them in the dryer, but a lot of the time they finish like on a drying rack. But depending on the way, I mean, you read the instructions on the label to see how your garment should be cared for, but they're usually pretty easy to care for. So this one is my last garment, and I do have another garment in the works. We'll talk about that later on though. Now, talking about socks, I have started the sock patterns and tutorials and recorded the first video for our first tutorial. This will be coming out, I think, in September for socks on double pointed needles. So the yarn is this really fun self-striping yarn. You can see the stripes here in the finished socks in this blend of like light browns and creams and blues. The yarn is from Biscotte Yarns. This is the self-striping yarn of the month. And I don't have a color name on here, so I don't know what color this is specifically. It's not for sale on the website. It's part of their Yarn of the Month club, where you can get like a different sock yarn every month. I'll have a link for that down below. I actually have a code for 10% off for, I don't know if it will work on the Yarn of the Month club, but it should work on other purchases at Biscotte Yarns. They have a lot of great yarns. So this is a blend of 85% superwash merino and 15% nylon. So very soft, nice yarns for socks. Now, the construction of the sock itself, we start with a closed cast on at the toe. And instead of doing something like a Turkish or Judy's Magic cast on or figure 8, this one is like super simple. Backwards loop, 8 stitches divided between 2 DPNs, and then you just start increasing. Like, it's not anything difficult at all. But the one thing with toe-up socks is no matter how you start them, they are going to be a little fiddly dealing with your needles and those few stitches until you get to like the toe shaping is done and you've got your full circumference. That is the downside of toe-up socks, is starting with just those few stitches and dealing with your needles. And so that is really, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. If you want to knit toe-up, you're going to have a fiddly moment as you're getting all of that worked out. So the toe itself is a spiral toe. Don't know if that will show up on the camera there. There we go. So you start right there at the center, and then you spiral out in 4 different places. So if you've ever done like a wedge toe, you know, you've got like the 2 increases on this side, 2 on this side, and that creates the toe. Same sort of idea. You still have 4 increases, but they're evenly spaced, and it creates a spiral instead. And I think it works really well on double pointed needles because we use 5 for this. Like, each section is on its own needle, and for our increases we're just using yarn over. So you yarn over, knit to the end of the needle, and repeat that 4 times to get your spiral shape. And then on the next round you just knit that yarn over through the back loop to twist it close, so you don't have like big eyelet holes here or anything. But the yarn overs are the easiest thing to work when you have such, that's the other thing, when you're working so many like just few stitches. Trying to do a make one or something, it just can feel even more fiddly. So just a yarn over. Simple, wrap it around your needle and keep going, and then knit it through the back loop on the next round. So the toe shaping is very simple once you get past that fiddly cast on. And then the sock leg is just plain stockinette. And then we have our gusset increases, and then a heel turn. It's just a round heel using German short rows for this one, and then a basic heel flap, which is also just in stockinette. But if you like a Eye of Partridge or some sort of slip stitch pattern, you could easily put that in there as well if you want that pattern on the back of your heel. But I prefer to do everything just in stockinette to teach you all of this stuff, and then you can add those elements that you want later on. And then the cuff is just a knit one, purl one cuff,
and finishing with Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. So that pattern is coming in September. I just finished, I knit the first sock and sort of write the pattern as I do that, and then I stop and I write the whole pattern like it's going to be published, and then I get it all graded so it's all like 11 different sizes. And then I knit the second sock doing the tutorial, like recording the videos for that as I knit the second sock. And then I can sort of read through the pattern and just check to make sure everything is like sounding clear and easy to follow. So I knit my second sock from the actual pattern to make sure things are clear. And now I just have to get it tech edited and do all the photos and things like that. And then of course edit and upload the video. But that will be coming in September. So that's everything that's off the needles, and I've got quite a list of things that are currently on my needles. Technically this one just came off the needles and I just wove in all the ends, but I still have to add the tassels, so I'm technically calling it on the needles just because it's not quite finished. And it also needs a good soak and a block. It's sort of bulging out right here in the middle. So this is the Lunae Shawl by Natasja Hornby, and it's a combination of this sort of textured pattern and some mosaic in there. I'm going to see if you can see that textured pattern right there. There it goes. Really simple to do, a little bit tedious sometimes because, well, on the front you're like knitting 3 stitches and then pulling the first stitch over 2, and that creates the texture. Then on the wrong side you have to increase all of those stitches that you pulled over, so it's a lot of purlwise make ones, which are a little tedious. But the texture is really nice. It's just, I like that addition, you know, instead of just plain garter or stockinette. And then the mosaic is done in garter stitch in between. So this one is worked. You start like at one tip, like right here, and you're increasing along one edge to create sort of this crescent in the middle. This part here. And then you have those different stitch patterns going on as well. And then it decreases all the way down to this little bit right here, right there. And then you pick up stitches all along that increase edge, and you start working in this direction, and that creates that big border and more of that textured pattern here, and then this big mosaic border. So I really loved the construction of it, and pattern was, I mean, the instructions were really clear, easy to follow, just a lot of them because you have so much going on, like all the different mosaic sections and the stitch patterns and the increasing and then the decreasing and then picking up here. Now picking up the stitches was my, well, it was my own fault. Like, it tells you how many stitches to pick up, and I should have like broken that up into sections. I can't remember, it might have been like 200 stitches in each half, something like that. So you get to like this part when you're picking up like almost to the center and you're like, oh, I still have to pick up way too many stitches and I can't cram them all in here, so I'd have to pull back and redo it. I did that like 3 times before. I'm like, why don't I stop and sort of section out so I know I need to get, you know, 50 stitches between this part and this part. And after I did that, things went much more smoothly. But it does need a good blocking because I noticed right here in the middle, and it could be the way I picked up stitches as well, this is that center part of the crescent shape that went this way. When I picked up stitches here, it kind of bulges out a little bit right there, and I'm hoping by I should be able to block it out. It's a garter stitch, so I should be able to give it a good stretch. But other than that, and one mistake, I don't even see it. I didn't think I would see it, thank goodness. But there was one mistake in the mosaic chart, and I didn't notice until after like 2 rows later, and there was no way I was ripping out this whole border to fix it. Because I stopped and I looked at it and I'm like, I don't even notice it. Right now I see it. So I'm looking for it so I see it. There should have been like one little blue stitch in the middle of these white squares. And that wasn't, like, it was a mistake in the pattern. But it's not noticeable, you know, when you're looking at it from a distance. Nobody's going to see that one stitch that should have been blue. But that was my only, I think there wasn't any issues with the pattern itself. Everything was good, except there was like that one stitch in the chart that should have been blue but was white. And I can see it when I'm actually looking for it. I know where to look, but like from a distance, nobody is going to see that. And also on the edges, like along that mosaic part, the edge stitch is like always white except for a few rows, and I don't know why she just didn't keep them white, because you end up with like these two like blue stitches on the end where it wraps around that white edge. It's not a big deal either, it's just something that bugs me, and I should have just changed it myself, because looking at it, it's another one of those things. It's not going to bother me when I wear it. It bothers me now, but it won't later on. I just won't think about it then. But I really do like the pattern. I love the construction. I have a few skeins of yarn from Alley Cat Yarns in her smooth sock, and I'm thinking I might get one more skein and use just the construction. I like this idea of knitting a small crescent shape this way and then picking up stitches and knitting like some other sort of pattern along the bottom. So I'm kind of inspired by that construction method. I don't think I will do, I wouldn't use the same stitch patterns at all. It's more of the construction that I really like, and it's different, it's unique, it's not like the normal triangle shawl or whatever. It's still sort of like a big crescent shape, triangle crescent, but I like that it's longer. It's much longer than a lot of other triangle shawls end up being very deep and then sort of not a wide wingspan. I prefer a longer wingspan. So I really like how that was worked, that whole like small crescent in the middle and then picking up stitches, and just a really unique construction. So I'd like to, I don't know, use that. Maybe I'll design something using that construction method. Anyway, so this shawl, I'll have the links for everything down below. Now the yarn is Cascade 220, two different bases. The white, which is what I used a lot of and I'm going to use for the tassels. I didn't want to spend too much on all those tassels, so just the plain Cascade 220 and the fingering weight, of course. And then Cascade Heritage for this gray and this navy, which is a softer superwash merino wool. I think the white is like just a Highland wool or Peruvian wool, so it's a little more scratchy, but then the merino wool for the other two colors. So I didn't mind mixing them, that worked just fine. But I think it came out well. I really like it, and I just have a lot of tassels to do next. Now the next thing still on my needles are a pair of fingerless mitts and a cowl. The cowl is all done. Ends are woven in. It just needs a good wash. The owl cowl, this is a design that I've created for Knit Now magazine. And my daughter really loved it, so I'm just knitting another set for her, because with the magazine you can, I could have sent an envelope and have things returned to me, but I didn't bother. And I had enough yarn left, so I could just knit using the same exact yarn. So it's just this corrugated rib at the top and the bottom, and this cute owl motif. My daughter really liked it. She calls it the owl cowl. And the fingerless mitts are sort of the same, corrugated rib and the owl on the back, and then a simple Fair Isle pattern on there. I still have to add the thumbs. It's just an afterthought thumb, very simple. I put some waste yarn right there, so I've got to unpick that and pick up stitches and knit like a little bit of ribbing for the thumb. So that's all that's left to do on these. So the only way to get that pattern though is by purchasing a copy of the magazine, but I can link to that down below too. So fun, simple, easy pattern. Now I did mention in the last episode like my trouble with doing stranded knitting in the round. Not on a bigger thing like this. I used a 16-inch circular, totally fine. A larger project I don't have issues, but when it comes to small things that have to be on like DPNs or something like that, I've been struggling with finding a method I like when it comes to stranded knitting. And with these mittens I ended up trying 2 circulars, and I knit them actually at the same time, 2 at a time on 2 circulars, and so far that's my favorite method. I still want to try short circulars, like 9 or 12-inch circulars, probably 9-inch for this size, because that's the most similar to knitting, you know, other things in the round would be just short circular needles. So I'd like to still give that a try, but I've tried all of the methods. I do not like flexible double points or double points for small things with Fair Isle knitting or stranded knitting. Magic loop is okay, but 2 at a time, or two circulars, I actually prefer that. And I'm still surprised by that because I don't mind magic loop. I use it quite a lot, but I find that for some reason two circulars feels like there's less fiddling, moving stuff around. You know, like on magic loop, you've got to pull out one needle and push one back and move things around. You have to do the same on two circulars, but it doesn't feel like as much work. I have no idea why, but right now that's my preferred way to do stranded knitting if I have to do a small circumference. I have a pair of socks. They're on my list of things to do, but it's going to be a while because I've got my sock tutorials I'm working on right now, so I'm not working on any other sock patterns, and those are stranded knitting, and I think I'm going to do them on two circulars, but we'll see. But I just wanted to say, if you're having issues with like stranded knitting on small circumferences, then try all the different methods until you find the one that you like. So for me, that's two circulars. Surprisingly, I'm still surprised by that. Oh, and the yarn for this is the same yarn that's in the pattern itself. It's a Stylecraft Aran. It's 100% acrylic, Aran weight. Nothing, I mean, it's just a basic acrylic, but that's what my daughter wants. She just wants something that she can throw in the washer, you know, and easy to care for. Now, I like to keep a simple project in my purse for when I'm at church or just out and about. Like I had a dentist appointment last week, so something I can work on when I'm just out, but has to be simple enough that I am not gonna like have to make a note of where I am in the pattern or something like that. And I have a pile of a bag of like random acrylic yarns and novelty yarns that a lady from church gave to me. She was cleaning stuff out, so she asked if I wanted it. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll take it. And so I was trying to figure out what to do with all of this yarn, and I asked my father-in-law, he's a pastor, 2 different churches actually, if he ever had people asking about, you know, don't like hats or scarves or mittens. I mean, we live in Canada, so things get cold here. And he said he'd love to have like just a basket full of winter accessories. So if somebody shows up and they need something like that, then he's got stuff there. I'm like, well, that's perfect. I've got all of this yarn, don't know what to do with it, so I can knit up some hats and mittens and scarves and things like that. So I went through and I pulled out the ones that had, you know, like maybe 3 skeins of yarn, because that's generally enough, 300-gram skeins for like a scarf. And I've got one going right now with, this is about half the yarn right there, I think, and making good progress. This is good, like, I don't want to think too much knitting. So, I mean, it was supposed to just stay in my bag, and I like when I'm at church to not be focusing on my own projects, to feel like I'm doing something that will contribute. So doing like sort of this donation knitting works for that as well. But I've also ended up working on it at home. So the pattern is A Good Scarf by Barbara Benson, and it's just garter stitch, but then it's got a few slipped stitches in there. So it's still really simple because you're just knitting and slipping 5 stitches and purling 5 stitches and, you know, working on edge, slipping the edge stitch too to get a nice chained edge. But the pattern, super, super simple, and I love it. So I'm going to link to that. It's Barbara Benson, A Good Scarf. And the yarn, I have no idea what this yarn is. It's just, I can tell it's an acrylic. I did like the wraps per inch to figure out, you know, like the approximate like gauge of the yarn. I think it's a worsted weight or maybe DK. And then just chose, you know, needles that were appropriate for that kind of yarn. But I can tell by the feel that it's just a generic acrylic yarn. But I had enough of it, so I figure I'm just going to keep knitting until I'm running out, because this pattern, it's a 1 row repeat. You just continue doing that row until you're out of yarn. So I'm just going to keep going. I have enough, I think, for a scarf. This is about almost half the yarn right here. So not a super long scarf, but a scarf. And just a fun little pattern. Simple to do, but just not, like, I don't love just knitting garter stitch by itself. So this has just enough in it to make me, you know, pay attention, because you've got those slip stitches. And it's reversible because you're slipping them on both sides. So it's completely reversible. So weave in your ends carefully if you do this one, so you won't see them. I sort of like try to put them right in the middle of the garter stitch so I can weave it into the garter stitch later using duplicate stitch. But just a great little easy little pattern when you want something that's very simple. I don't even have to look at the pattern now. I just follow what's on my needles and I know what I have to do. But produces something that, you know, it does look really nice. I just like those slipped stitches in there. It makes those nice linear lines. It just looks really good. So that's it for knitting projects that are on my needles, but I am doing a little bit of crochet, so I want to talk about that as well. Just one crochet project. I wanted to improve my crochet skills. I write articles when I get the chance about knitting, and sometimes the editors want me to include something about crochet or even about woven fabrics. That was in one of my last articles that I worked on. But so I know like the basics of crochet. I can't say I've done any. I've never completed a full project. I used to just crochet squares when I was a kid. But I wanted to improve my skills, so it would help with writing especially, so I would know more about what I was trying to talk about. But also, because sometimes you can use crochet with your knitting, and I thought the best way to do that was by just picking a project that had lots of different sort of stitches going on. So I didn't want to spend... Well, I ended up spending a lot on the yarn, but I didn't end up spending anything on the pattern. It's a knit along or crochet along pattern by Janie Crow online. And she's got the most spectacular crochet blanket patterns. And I chose one of hers because she usually has, the patterns are really well written. You can, I'll link to it. It's free online because it was a knit along with, crochet along with Stylecraft yarns. But she also has YouTube videos that share lots of tips and tricks and walk you through how to do all these different motifs. And I found those, just watching those before I even started crocheting, just little things she shares to make things look really nicely finished, and then how to work things, really, how to do the different stitches and things like that. I felt like it was just a good way to really practice my crochet skills. So it's the Fruit Garden blanket. And the original yarn is a Stylecraft yarn, and I ended up using, in a DK weight, I think, I ended up using Knit Picks Brava Sport instead. So the first motif is this one here, this little pink flower, and then you do all of this edging, and then this was the second one. So I finished the second one, and then you start joining them together, so you're not trying to do all of the joining at the end where it can feel very overwhelming. I like how she has you doing it in little bits. So this was the second motif. You start in the center, of course, and you've got this flower and then these leaves all around it. And so I've got 3 of these panels complete. And even though I'm using technically a different weight of yarn, I'm still getting the same measurements. She has you stop and measure at different points, and my measurements are still matching hers. And last time I talked about how I was having some hand pain, and a lot of people had some really good ideas about that. One of them was, we'll try different needles or crochet hooks, because the handles and the way you hold them can affect that pain. And what I realized though was I was gripping and really pulling tight. I think, like I did when I first started knitting. I don't know if you were the same when you started, but with both hobbies, I found that when I first started, I was very tight, holding and yanking on my yarn and, really cramming my needle in there, and everything was really tight. And I was doing the same with my crochet when I first started to practice it again. And some of my motifs are coming out too small too. So I didn't want to, not enough to change the hook size. So I was making myself relax as I did it. And I realized that it was much easier and I wasn't getting any pain when I just didn't grip things and try to do it so tightly, just to relax. So I still want to try some different types of handles to see how that works as well. But thank you for the advice about that. That was very helpful. So I finished, that was clue number 2, and I'm on clue number 3 right now. But there is another part, you're working on these motifs, but then there's this larger border motif, but she breaks it down into smaller bites instead of trying to do this whole elaborate motif all in once. So that's the acanthus motif, and this was the first. I've got 8 of them right here. So this is part of that clue number 2, was making this little floral motif. And then with clue number 3, you start building out around it, and then a little at a time, every clue you're adding a little more to that. So I like how she's very thoughtful, breaking things down, thinking about how people are going to feel at each stage, and in her opinion, like trying to do this whole decorative border motif, all like 8 of them, all right at the end with so many things going on, it would be overwhelming. So instead she's broken it down. So you're doing a little bit of this motif every clue until you complete the whole thing. So between that and then also having you join the squares, like she has you do certain squares, so you end up joining them as you go instead of trying to do it all at once at the end where, you know, all these ends to weave in, all these squares to join. So she's very thoughtful that way, like thinking through how things should work. I really appreciate that. So clue number 3, I haven't done the acanthus part, that really decorative border, but I've just finished the squares. I still have to weave in my final few ends, but this one I still have some surface crochet to do, where we just add a little X in the middle and we do some like a crochet chain around here. So I still have that to finish, but just lots of fun techniques that I'm learning, and then all of the little things that she shares in the videos, you know, about how to just make things neat and finish things off really nice. So I'm still in the process of working on clue number 3. So that's everything that's on my needles. I do have a few upcoming projects that I'll just mention really quickly. I'm hoping to work on these over August because I'm going to be taking the month off from videos. This will be the last video you'll see until the end of August with August's podcast. So I'm going to just be taking a little break. I'll be working behind the scenes on some of those sock tutorials and things like that, but also taking some vacation time and just hanging out with my family. And we're not going anywhere, but probably, you know, little day trips here and there and picnics and parks and things like that. But I will be working on some, hopefully, new projects. I have a stack of sport weight, Knit Picks sport weight yarn behind me. Just the Wool of the Andes and worsted, or sport weight. With plans to dye that yarn. I'm hoping to do that over my little vacation time. I just picked up some citric acid. That was the last thing I needed so I can dye the yarn. I want to knit the Rose Cardigan by Andrea Mowry. The design looks really interesting. You're knitting like these 4 quadrants and then joining them all together, but there's all that fading going on as well. And I couldn't find any yarn, the colors that I really wanted to use, so I thought, why not dye the yarn myself? And then probably at the same time I'm going to dye some yarn for some giveaways later on as well, just to give that a try. But so I'm going to hopefully get the yarn dyed. That might be, and get the cardigan started over the next month. But also the next sock tutorial, I'll be using some Knit Picks Hawthorn yarn. I've got some leftovers from a shawl, so I'm going to be doing another sock tutorial, the 2 circular method for that one, and that one's going to have a mock short row toe and heel, and then some stripes and contrast colors for that toe and heel as well. Now, another project I'd like to tackle over the next month is a pair of mittens from this book, The Traditions Revisited, Modern Estonian Knits by Alex Bird. Now, this pattern's only available in this book, but I just love the way it looks. It includes embroidery and fringe, and both techniques I have never done before, so I'm really looking forward to tackling them. So the yarn I'm using, I'm just using Cascade 220 in superwash. It's black, so I don't know if I've ever knit with black yarn before, so this will be a new experience. I've got to get this caked up. And then for the fringe and the embroidery, I've got like a bag of sock yarn left over, so I'm probably just going to pull out of that and see what bright fun colors I have. I've got like some hot pink and some turquoise, so I might do that. I think that might really be fun with the black yarn as the base. So I'm really looking forward to trying those techniques as well. So I've got lots to do over my little summer vacation, trying some new techniques and dyeing some yarn, working on those sock tutorials, and one more project to show you. I'm going to be working on a new design as well for another stranded knit cowl. This one will be a self-published design. So the plan with this one is ocean waves, basically. I want to use the white as sort of the background color. And then in the swatch, I used a few different yarns from Knit Picks. It was a gradient set, so I just like went through some different colors and you get sort of this gradient look. But then I was thinking they have some yarns that are already like gradients built in. So I grabbed one that has lots of these wonderful blues. This is the Cousteau colorway. So chroma fingering, which is let me see here, superwash wool and nylon, but I really wanted to do like sort of that gradient effect with this stitch pattern. So this is going to be a cowl when I'm all done, but knit lengthwise. So you cast on, you start working in the round, but you're knitting it going this way until it's like, probably until I use up all the yarn, and then I will sew the ends together. So you get a cowl that is running in this direction around your neck, basically. So it's just going to be very simple stranded color work using this gradient blue for that ocean waves design. I really liked this pattern. I found it in, the book is called Ultra Knit by Andrea Rangel, I think, and lots of really fun stranded colorwork patterns. And I thought this would be really neat in a cowl with that gradient blue running through it to get all of those different blues, like sort of ocean waves. So that's also going to hopefully be on my needles next month. So we've got to finish with our giveaway, but like I said before, this is the last video until the podcast at the end of the month in August. So I will see you again then. I might post a bit on the community tab saying hi or whatever, and telling you who the giveaway winner is, because we have to finish with our giveaway. So we're going to be giving away a magazine and 2 skeins of yarn this month. So the yarn is Knit Picks Mighty Stitch. They sent me this. I'm an affiliate for them. I really like their yarns, use them a lot for a lot of projects. You can tell probably through a lot of the projects I talked about today. And Mighty Stitch is this really lovely sort of heathered yarn. It's very soft. It's a blend of 20% superwash wool and 80% acrylic, and it's machine washable and dryable, so you get a little bit of that wool for that added softness, but the acrylic makes it easy to care for. So this is a worsted weight. You're going to get these 2 really pretty heathered colors. This one is called Mulberry Heather, and this one is called Navy Heather. And along with the 2 skeins of yarn, you're going to get an issue of the Knitter magazine. Now, for some reason, I didn't get, I'm subscribed to this magazine, and then I hadn't been getting my subscription, so I messaged them. They sent me a replacement copy, and it showed up like the day before my original copy did. So I have an extra one. So I'm going to be passing it on to one of you. This is one of my favorite knitting magazines. It's the only one I subscribe to, actually. And I really like it. It's a British magazine, so everything's in those British terms, and you know, using millimeters and things for your needle sizes. But you're going to get this issue of the Knitter along with those 2 skeins of yarn. So to enter this giveaway, I'm going to put I'm going to put the Mighty Stitch yarn up here so you can see the different colors. Just tell me which color you like, and that is how I'll know that you want to enter the giveaway. So you can leave other comments as well, but if your comment includes like a favorite colorway from the yarns here, then I'll know that you want to be entered into this giveaway. So it's open worldwide, anybody can enter, and YouTube, disclaimer here, is not sponsoring this giveaway in any way. Nobody is sponsoring this giveaway. The yarn is a yarn that Knit Picks sent to me as an affiliate, and the magazine is just an extra copy I have. So no other sponsors, just me sponsoring the giveaway this month. So leave a comment down below telling me your favorite color of the Knit Picks Mighty Stitch yarns, and I'll know that you want to enter. And the giveaway will be closed. What is the date today? I don't know, but whatever you're watching now, this video is uploaded on Thursday, the last Thursday of July. So Wednesday from now is when I'm going to be picking a winner. So we have about 1 week to enter the giveaway. And then I will go through those comments. I'll use a random comment generator to pick a comment that includes one of those colors, and then I will leave a comment on your comment telling you that you're the winner. Nobody else can. I've got it set so there's no spam comments that can be left using the word giveaway. Those all have to be approved by me. So if you see a message under your comment telling you to message me at toniaknits.com or hello@toniaknits.com, that's because I need your name and mailing address so I can mail you your prize. So make sure you have your notifications turned on so you can receive a notice that you've gotten a response to your comment. So I think that's all of the technical details about that. So leave your comments down below, and we will pick a winner next Wednesday. Thank you for joining me for this month's podcast. If you're new here and you want to catch up on past episodes, I'll put a playlist for this year's podcast episodes right here, and you can click through and watch that. Or if you've been around a while and you just want to watch another video and continue hanging out with me, I'll have another video right here that you can click on, and I'll see you in that next video.